Some of you have heard the story that on my way to ordained ministry, I spent a lot of time pursuing a dream of becoming a professional soccer player. Whenever I hear this gospel reading, I think of a certain part of that journey, which I'd like to share with you this morning. I was playing soccer in college, 20 years ago now. And in 2005, I applied to study abroad at a program at the University of Oxford in England, and was accepted for the Hillary term in the winter of 2006. But here's the rub. I wasn't exactly going to Oxford for the academics. I wasn't terribly interested in the studies much at all. I was going to England because I knew that you just had to go to England in order to be a professional footballer or soccer player. If my feet weren't yet good enough to get me to England, then I'd use my mind to get there, and hopefully my feet would help me get that professional career started. What's interesting, as I look back at my adolescence and young adulthood, is that this dream to be a professional footballer never felt like it was my dream alone. It was something that I struggled with spiritually also. It was something that I prayed about, that I spoke to God about, something that I felt was my calling. I was sure during those late high school and early college years that God was calling me to be the greatest footballer the world had ever seen. Now, I don't know if I'm genetically related to the Zebedee family that we just heard about in our gospel reading today, but like them, I know what it's like to have an abundance of self-confidence. Like James and John Zebedee, I was sure that God was calling me to greatness. Have you ever felt like that before? Have you ever felt like you were meant for something more? Like a typical American life seemed rather boring to you? Like you might not fit into an ordinary life well at all? I certainly felt that way. I felt called to a life of greatness, a life of accomplishment, a life of achievement. I think a lot of young people feel that way. You might even say that I felt sure God was calling me to be the richest and most famous soccer player in history. It sounds funny now, but I was working quite hard toward that goal for many, many years. And when I went to Oxford, in Oxford, greatness surrounded me at every turn. You don't have to look very far to see the Wren Tower at Christ Church College, or where Roger Bannister ran that first 4-minute mile in history. I worshiped in the church where Thomas Cranmer, the author of the first 2 books of Common Prayer, was dragged down from the pulpit to be martyred in the street in 1556. I ate at the pub, Eagle and Child pub, where C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien hung out and talked together. And the Bodleian Library, that famous library in Oxford, has copies of the Magna Carta and many of Jane Austen's manuscripts. What an incredible place. A place filled with greatness. All of that is to say, I don't have any trouble relating to James and John Zebedee. These followers of Jesus who are working hard and making sacrifices, but who also think that Jesus might just take care of them in his administration. It's so easy to see this happening, isn't it? You can imagine these 2 brothers following Jesus and comparing themselves to the other disciples on the way, feeling like, maybe we deserve a little bit of a special treatment. I mean, we were really kind of first on this whole bandwagon. They start to come up with plans, and they decide to approach Jesus when the moment is right. Isn't that what happens today still in business and in politics? Look, we're with you in all of this, Jesus, and it hasn't been easy for us, but you're going to need to do something for us when you make it. Promise us here and now that we can sit, one at your left hand and one at your right, when you take back the throne. In Matthew's gospel, it gets even better, because they don't have the gumption to ask Jesus themselves. They send their mother to ask them for them. And yet Jesus' response It could not be more gracious and kind and inviting, though the other disciples are furious when they hear that James and John have been posturing for privileges once again. So finally, Jesus says, hey, everybody, come here. Let's all gather around. We have to have a little chat. This is something that each and every one of you need to hear, Jesus says. You know how it is with the Gentiles. You know how it is with the Romans. You know how it is with the chief priests. You know how it is in Washington, and election time is coming fast. You know how their great ones are tyrants over them and how they lord power over each other. It's not to be so among you. It's not to be so among my followers, Jesus says. If you want to be great, that's fine. But greatness in my kingdom means that you're going to have to serve somebody. Greatness to God means to give your life away. So many people at so many different times modeled this truth to me in those years that it eventually got through. And I know that so many people that you have known and loved and learned from have demonstrated to you what greatness truly looks like and how it's powerful to serve. It's powerful to give. It's powerful to voluntarily suffer. It's powerful to love as Christ loves us and gives himself for us, that we might find that abundant life that we're all longing for. When we encounter this Christ and his empire of service and the might of his gentleness, it reveals to us the pride and the ego and the posturing that we've been doing all along. It reveals the tyranny of our souls and liberates us from thinking that life is about wealth or fame or power or violence or somehow ruling over other people. Christ reveals this grace, this truth, this humility to us all the time and invites us into a new politics, a new way of understanding how we're to organize our very lives. That's a shift that I felt recently after Hurricane Helene when driving around in the wake of the storm. I don't know if you noticed, but there seems to be a slight increase in political signage lately. I'm not sure what that could be about. I'm talking especially about the large signs with lots of words, which always end with, vote for Democrats or vote for Republicans. I know that freedom of speech is important. I understand many of these issues that are being debated, they matter greatly. And yet after the hurricane, when so many people were struggling, many still are, and when so many neighbors cared for each other and people took the time to check on one another and offer their time and their resources and their donations to make sure that their neighbors were getting through, I got to tell you, I think that hurricane made a mockery of those political signs by forcing us all to step into a way of understanding the preciousness of life and how every neighbor we have is invaluable to us. How the chance to serve, the chance to be there for each other is one of the greatest gifts that God has ever given us. Those are the politics that we're all truly longing for. That's what greatness really looks like. And those are the politics being given to us in Jesus Christ. So if you want to be great, Jesus says, that's fine. Many have felt that way before. But greatness in my kingdom means you're going to have to serve one another. Whoever wishes to become great among you, he says, must be your servant. And whoever wishes to be first among you must be slave of all. Amen.